Okay, everyone, here's a question. Can you imagine living without water? Or even more horrifically, living with a facade of people, maybe 10, maybe 1,000 together without water. Okay, this may sound horrific, but the actual situation is not that gruesome. By water, but today, by water I mean resources. They can be any resources, mineable resources such as copper, silver, gold within the earth, and natural resources such as farmable land and huntable animals. The situation of lacking resources after being able to obtain them in the first place fits perfectly with the town we're going to introduce today, whose name is Palisade. It's a small town built by James Saxton, man from Florida, and has ownership over 2 different mines, each obtaining great amounts of precious minerals such as silver and copper. It is also the center, the leading point of three different sections of the Pacific Railroad. And to discuss in more depth of this topic today, we have Francis here to introduce this topic with us. Okay, Professor, I believe you just read my introduction about Palisade I sent you.
Yes.
So can you brief us on a bit on the background information of that era? Why did the Americans flood to the West?
Okay, well, Eric, that's an interesting question. There's a lot of different interpretations on why Americans flooded from what was, traditionally the home base on the East Coast and why spread across. I personally think it's a huge land grab in the sense that Americans were born out of a culture that just decided it needed more, right? The history of the United States has just been one of constant expansion from the start of the 13 colonies all the way to the French-American buying the Louisiana territories, so going west of the Mississippi, going into the Rocky Mountains, going to California, even going as far as Alaska and Hawaii, and then even having military bases all over parts of Asia Pacific. That's a different story. So to answer your question though, it's really Americans were interested in improving their material well-being. They were ambitious, they were entrepreneurial, they were hardworking, and that's really the background of it. It just so happens to coincide with what's happening in the 1880s at that time, 1870s, 1880s. It's the Industrial Revolution. There's a lot of industrialization going on. There's a need for more resources. There's a need for all of these types of oil, etc. And people were willing to go out and uproot their lives and try to obtain riches. I think it's a very simple story. It's not more complicated than that. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, so in the case of Palisade, the most significant influence that the town has endured is the train, right? The tracks.
Yeah.
So I heard that the train was the key component of American westward movement during that period of time. And due to the prevalence of train technology, places like Pittsburgh, the iron industry also flourished.
Yeah.
So how did the train actually influence the West, or should I say everything of the West, from the Western culture to its economic well-being?
Oh, you can think about it. It's a new form of transportation that does what? It just makes exploration faster, easier, and more convenient. Faster, easier, more convenient. That's redundant. You think it's the same. The train was what the automobile, what the airplane, what the rocket shape is today, right? And so you don't get the exploration without the railroads. It's just, again, it's a very simple idea that more people have more access to more land. Right? And speaking for Palisades, I guess it's sort of a hub. It's a central hub where people would come, stop for a bit, and then go on to somewhere else, right? And so I guess Palisades is similar to a lot of small train or transportation hubs that dotted the American West that, unfortunately, once that type of transportation no longer became so feasible, they simply just died out.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in this concept of more people being able to obtain more land through transportation. Mm-hmm. You see the industrial distribution around the lakes. As time passed by, the train tracks around that area actually decreased, but the ports around that area, especially alongside the lakes, increased because because the shipping method. The advancement in shipping technology increases the efficiency of that transportation method, and against such competition, the train tracks died out, and what became of Pittsburgh was actually a product of that.
Are you referring to the Great Lakes? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, the Great Lakes.
Okay, so the Great Lakes. Again, those are navigable lakes. And if you think about the cities that are populated along those, I was born in a small town that was actually on the Great Lakes, Oswego, New York. You ever heard of it?
I've been in Europe, but never been there.
No, Oswego, New York. It's the same. It's on the shores of Lake Ontario. Have you ever heard of it?
I've been to, I mean, like New York State, but no.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's a small town that at one point in time had a very important fort that was a center of a lot of battles in the French-American War, but now it's nothing, okay? It's population 20,000 people. And after I moved, it was, 20,000, 19,000. I'm just kidding. So yeah, what is it about transportation? Transportation, like any other commodity, any other product, any other service, people will flock to what's cheapest. And if railroads are more expensive, if moving products or moving passengers are more expensive, people will look for an alternative. And if the Great Lakes had developed ports, and if shipping or boat transportation became an alternative, then people are going to adapt that. It's an old story. People look for less expensive alternatives.
Right. The case of Palisade is like more extreme than the case I just proposed. Okay. You see the efficiency difference in shipping and train is not that much, right? You can ship 10 train loads worth of cargo in one ship, but one ship is worth about like 8 trains.
Yeah.
But it's not that much of a difference. But in the case of Palisade, the difference is much larger. So before the train came, the only method is to use horses.
Oh, the wagon, huh?
Yeah, the famous yet infamous wagons of the West.
Yeah.
I remember stories where they have to pick up buffalo dung to light fires for the passengers.
Yeah.
The efficiency difference between these two methods is, well, dramatic, I have to say. You see the people attending the gold rush, you just can't imagine them flocking to the west of the Rocky Mountains in wagons, right?
Yeah, some people did. Some very hardy souls actually did. But again, you just don't get the scale. And if you're trying to build a civilization, you're starting to build a town, you just need people, right? And those people need to have something to do. The gold mine and the gold rush that brought people to the west, right? Again, if everyone was coming in a wagon, you just wouldn't get the numbers that were needed to mine that gold in sufficient numbers.
Yeah. Speaking of gold, there is still mine in Palisade.
Is that right? There's gold in Palisade?
No, it's not gold. It's more copper.
Oh, okay.
It's
yeah.
like
precious metals.
Yeah, all the other precious metals. There is silver, a bit of gold, but that's anywhere there is a bit of gold beneath the soil.
Okay.
That place was originally mined by wagons, cargo transported by wagons to the east. But as the train came, everything changed. So in this scenario, what would you think about resource towns? So in the material, I propose that because the inefficiency of the wagons, more people need to stay in Palisade, right? They need to stay in Palisade to pick up more cargo to pick up more supplies for the return trip. But as trains came, that demand diminished. So
I see, because you're saying that. Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. So again, if a train is going through a city, that eliminates the need for horse and buggy and wagons, right? Mm-hmm. And so are you suggesting that even though it was a transportation hub, that the train was detrimental to Palisades, or? So
yeah, I'm actually trying to consider whether coming with the train was a good thing for Palisade, because you see the demand for I would create a word right here, Palisadian. it sounds a bit like Palestine. Do not freak out. Palisadian service, local hotel, local bars, right? That diminishes, which was kind of what the mayor was trying to regain a little later.
I think so. But again, reading your list, reading your document here, so he was trying to increase demand by having entertaining shows.
Yeah.
I think to answer your question, I can't imagine that the railroad would be a negative. I just think, again, if you're looking to increase demand, you're looking to build a larger community, one that needs a more permanent establishment that has bars and saloons, schools, hospitals, all of those things, you need to have people coming through. And I would think that the railroad would have been a boon for Palisades. It's not a boon for every town, okay, but I think it would have been.
Right. I think you might have got a point here. Because what I view Palisade is, I view it as like a small tube before coming with the train, right?
Okay.
There's water, there's
tube, I got it.
So let me just figure it out. So you have this small tube, right?
Right.
There is water flowing through it,
yes.
A constant amount of water.
Yes.
So because the tube is small, in any given time, the tube was full.
Yes, I get it.
Yeah, with the coming of the train, the tube expanded.
Yes.
It's a larger tube, but the same constant amount of water flows through, and as such, most of the tube was empty.
Oh, I see. And so what you're saying is that the railroad didn't necessarily increase the number of people who were coming through.
Yeah.
Even though the capacity was larger.
Right, because you see Palisade is in the middle of nowhere. The only advantage that place gets is its resources. That's kind of a two-way too. People come, they mine resources, and they leave.
I gotcha.
Nobody stays,
Yeah.
except for the ones who want to provide service and gain profit by within that population.
Gotcha. Yeah, again, I think it's probably because it's probably an inhospitable place to begin. It's not like, if you think about the cities that have grown up, San Francisco is on the water. LA kind of is on the water. Seattle's on the water. Even the city of Salt Lake, Utah is on the water. It's not a coincidence that those places became major cities. Palisades, I think, my guess is like a lot of cities, it had its moment, and then after its usefulness had died down, it couldn't reinvent itself. I think that's probably the issue. Either there wasn't enough people, there wasn't enough positive momentum to really build a community. Nothing really stuck. There was no base. And so it was always a town for migrants or for people who were just coming through.
So about the nothing stuck situation, can you give us a bit more example that you know?
Yeah, okay, so I don't know. The thing about the nothing sticks example is these are towns that are dead and nobody knows about them unless you've actually gone and done the research. Okay, but I have done a little bit of search. I've done some projects in Montana, and you and I spoke off camera about this a little bit. And Montana is a resource town. It's a state that had copper and nickel, and immigrants flocked to that part of the world to mine, and there was a lot of investment coming in, and again, that was essential for industrialization of the United States. So when I was there was a couple of cities that they are no longer there, right? There's an old train station that hasn't been active in 70, 80 years. And I think, I can't even remember the name. It was just a very quaint little town. You look back at it with a little bit of nostalgia and say, oh, can we remember what it used to be back in the day? And the answer is no, I can't. But the point is that that is kind of the story of the United States, right? I built this city, I built this town, it had its purpose. Could the city reinvent itself and find its way to be relevant in a modern age? If it could be, then it succeeded. If it couldn't be, then, well, the residents packed up and moved, and now it's just, an empty train station on some random map.
Right. So when you talked about the concept of nothing stuck, I also thought about the book I read, 100 Years of Solitude, or should you say 100 años de soledad. I heard Netflix gonna prepare some sort of documentary about that place, or is it a movie or
100 Years of Solitude? You mean the book by?
Yeah, but Marcus. I heard Netflix is proposing to shoot some sort of movie about it. Whatever.
So probably mess it up.
The company that was mentioned in that book, the one that brought the bananas.
Oh, the one Bitter Fruit. So United something. United.
It's original. Originally in reality, that company was called United Fruit.
Okay.
Deemed the East Indian Company of America.
Yeah.
It suits the name.
Well, and again, back to my original point, that's another case of Americans' capitalism going overseas and expanding itself.
Right.
Okay.
So Macondo was a small town, an ancient one, before coming up the train and coming up the company. And after the train came, the company came, the town flourished because, bananas.
Right.
But then after the company left, after the 3,000 workers were killed and thrown into the sea, the town just failed to exist. The last 1/4 of the section of the book is just kind of about the last few people trying desperately to survive in a town against the nature.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of miffed. So if bananas can stick, if business can stick, if mineable resources, copper, they can't stick. So what can stick? What type of industry can stick?
You said can or cannot?
Can.
Are able to, yes. Well, in the case of Montana, a lot of the copper was strip mined in a way that was very detrimental to the environment. And so this is a case of people using their environment, their I'll say God-given, but they're the resources of the location and over-mining it. Okay, so you see that everywhere. So that happened definitely in Montana with copper. It became so polluted that the United States government designated it as a Superfund cleanup project. It's the largest one in the world. If you go to Montana now, there's a huge river toxic waste that they've been trying to clean up for decades. Okay, so that's a case of them over-mining. And again, it's capitalism at its worst. And I think we've become a little bit more sensitive to the idea that we need to maintain our resources. There's an environmental thing. I don't know about bananas. I mean, there's always going to be a need for bananas. However, I would think that in addition to Guatemala and parts of South America, Central and South America, people can get their bananas from other places too, right? Philippines, Thailand.
Yeah,
parts of Africa.
Republics. That's also I want to mention like the real part of Macondo is considered to be Colombia.
Colombia, okay, yeah, he was Colombian, that's right. So what happens to a couple of these places? Again, it's about reinvention. It's about, and this is, I think, is a positive thing about capitalism. There's an entrepreneurial spirit. It's like, okay, we have destroyed our natural resources and we can no longer make a living out of this. We need to, again, change focus. Again, I use the example of Montana. It's become a huge tourist attraction now. So it's good for hunting. It's great for skiing. It's great. It's got nature because it still has Yellowstone Park in that area. What are the negatives are is that a lot of rich people are coming in and buying up land, and poor people are having a difficult time staying. But again, it's an idea. People are trying to address a problem. How can you have economic growth within a certain area if it's just resources and then we've killed off all the resources? We need to find another way. Yeah, you talked about Pittsburgh. The city of Pittsburgh it was a Rust Belt city. It had its heyday, then it had a little bit of a depression. It's kind of coming back a little bit more, and it's reinventing itself a little bit as a tech town because of universities like Carnegie Mellon and Pittsburgh. Technology is starting to become the new driver of economic forces there. And again, what you see again is the same sort of thing, is that new money with new technology comes in and they take the commanding heights of an economy. And the people who've been there for a long time, the locals, if you will, tend to get a little bit resentful because they're on the outside looking in their hometown.
Right. So like before the day, I thought that the most enduring industry that can sustain like a town for eternity was agriculture. But yeah,
I have to disagree with that. Okay.
I know.
I have to disagree.
So, but it seems to me now the key concept is not growing things out of the earth. It's just the sustainability of interaction. Because you see agriculture as like 100% stay sustainable. You toss seeds into the earth, you grow them, you can grow them next year, right? There is like absolutely no barrier for you to like farm that land for an eternity. You can always provide like organic like.
Yes, that's true. Although, agriculture is a particularly vulnerable, I would say, industry. You have weather, you've got bugs, and prices for agricultural commodities is very unstable. So I think if you're going to, it's not a coincidence that primarily agricultural economies don't develop into rich economies. You can feed yourself, that's great, and it's really important. But remember, if you have a whole area that is dependent on agriculture alone and prices are dropping, you're going to have a huge depression. And that's been, again, the story the United States has experienced many, many times.
Yeah, so like I've said before, the key part about like a long living town, perhaps it's not the intended field they intended to mine and to get like resources, or like economic resources, not like the actual copper, iron sorts, or silver, or etc. But perhaps the sustainability they induce while implementing their actions, right? So based on that principle, what do you think is what part of the industry do you think would be most long living in the United States?
In the United States, okay. I'll answer that with a question. Based on your experience, what are the wealthiest cities in the United States?
Let me think about it. Aside from the few like vacation towns in Florida.
Correct. That's a good point. With the exception of those, I'm talking. Yeah.
Yeah, New York.
Right.
Los Angeles.
Yes.
San Francisco.
Correct.
And Washington.
Yeah, DC. Probably because it's got a little bit of political money. And what do they all have in common? I mean, they have a lot of things in common. But what am I? You can't read my brain. But what do you think I'm thinking is what do they all have in common?
I'm gonna like say my thoughts out loud right here.
Please.
So New York has what the thing that people like thought of first thing when they heard the name of New York is probably Wall Street.
Right.
Like New York has Wall Street.
Yeah.
San Francisco has Silicon Valley.
Correct.
Los Angeles had what? They have
Hollywood.
Yes, they have Hollywood.
Right.
Washington D.C. Well, they have the all big three.
And they have the federal government, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Washington D.C. I think is now the richest city.
I mean by the big three, I mean Parliament, White House, and
I see.
I mean that big three.
I got you. Well, it's not just the big three. It's the civil service that supports the federal government in the United States, and that is worth billions and billions and trillions of dollars. So, but you're right though. They all have an industry that can support it, or they're known for it. But they're also what? They used to be at one point in time big trading cities. London, Tokyo, Paris, all these other cities, they traded. They're open cities. And I'm biased, and this is, again, people may disagree with me on this one, but what does it say about wealth creation is that wealth creation comes from openness to trade. If you think about the city of Xi'an, for example, in the height of the Tang Dynasty, what's it famous for? It's famous for being a trading hub where cultures and languages and ideas mixed with one another freely. So
Yeah.
the idea is that if you're open to these ideas, that helps quite a bit. It's certainly helpful that New York has Wall Street. It's certainly helpful that the Bay Area has Silicon Valley. But again, you also have to be open to new people coming in. You have to be open to new ideas coming in. You have to be open to all these types of things. And what they all have, another thing they have in common is that they're very entrepreneurial cities. Not everyone's going to make it. Some people are going to go and going to fail big time.
I think what you're trying to get here is that like the one that's sustained is more dynamic. It can evolve as the situation of the background situation changes within time. I actually thought of the famous saying the Roman general Antony said about Rome. Like I thought I was like, you can't get everything in Rome or something. Like or I think his precise words is that if you can't get anything in Rome, if something in Rome, you are probably not going to get it anywhere else in the world. That's probably what you're trying to get about. Yeah. Because like the influx of like multicultural or like influence from like all over the world, they're able to adapt to the changing tides of the world with more ease. Right?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. And again, people will disagree with me. We don't need to talk about American politics right now, but there are people whose ideas on what a society ought to be or what the future of a country ought to be is not what I necessarily think it should be. But if you think about history, what are the wealthiest cities in the world? They're the ones that worth the most of.
Yeah, perhaps the lesson the Palisade is trying to teach us is that we probably we are not going to probably get a lot of water from a small tube.
Okay, yeah, that's
we
true.
need to expand that. We need to build a central water tower.
Yeah, I mean, Palisades I think was disadvantaged from the get-go. I mean, it really is in the middle of nowhere, and it's hard to build off of that type of foundation.
Yeah, Palisade is. I have to remind everybody that Palisade is still a central factor of like the Pacific Railroad. There are 3 railroads that potentially would cross it. However, the natural environment around that, like there's risks of like flash floods. It's not healthy for railroad service.
I gotcha. Okay, yeah. That's another disadvantage. If it's not, railroad guys are business keep people, and if they think that they're not going to get their investment because their tracks are going to get washed away, you can forget it.
Yeah, I think the concept of resource is going to follow us for an eternity. I mean, like we still have mineable resources right now. It's just they've changed from resources within the earth to things like technology, right? I may be a bit pessimistic here, but I would say there is only that much potential that that humanity can grind out of the element of silicon. And I would say that is a mineable resource. When that limit finally comes, that resource will be abandoned. I'm being overly pessimistic here, but this is just the assumption.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that, but if you're thinking that is a resource that's going to run out soon, if you think about, you're interested in international relations, you can think about the geopolitical and the economic ramifications that's going to have.
So yeah, I think I would say the Palisade directly tell us that's just like the endurance of place is determined by its not only its openness. I mean, the people of Palisade is quite open.
Okay.
It's also its geopolitical state that allows the tolerance of outer influence to prevail. Like we see Bay areas like San Francisco. Yeah, they are all set for outer influence.
Yeah.
No one would expect a small town in Central America having the same efficiency at integrating different outside influence as the Bay Area.
Yeah, it would take, if you're thinking about a small city in Central and South America, they don't have a lot of it's political too. You need to have a political regime that is open and welcoming and has things like provides public safety, provides security, and has laws where entrepreneurs and workers can go and know that their rights are going to be protected. Again, that's a different story, that's a different example, but again, a lot of things have to go right for a city to boom and develop. But I don't think in my opinion, I don't think it's rocket science necessarily. I think they're all quite understandable. But even you could do everything right and still not succeed. There's a lot of factors, geography being one of them, that could prohibit you from actually developing a new...
Yeah, we would say that Palisade is one of the unfortunate.
Yeah. If you've been to that part of the world, you know that it's really not that hospitable. It's just not. It's people if you like the desert, okay, that's fine, but most people don't. I don't particularly.
So that pretty much wraps it up for it. I'm really very happy to discuss the topic of Palisade and also the potential influence that may affect the growth of a city with you. That's it.
Oh,
And-
that's my pleasure. Thanks, Eric.
Okay.
You don't have to call me professor, but
Okay, thank you, Francis.
yeah. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to. I'm familiar with the American situation, but there are lessons that every society can teach another society,
Mhm.
and if that's what you're interested in studying, let me know. I think
Well,
it's.
if you're interested, let's stay in contact.
Yeah, let's stay in touch.
Okay, so I believe we have came to a conclusion. Palisade was not built by God in the first place to become a city as great as San Francisco or New York, but the lesson its experience can teach us is that openness and acceptance to outer influence is a key part of maintaining the dynamic movement of a city in accordance with the tide of the era. I believe the solution that we finally came to for those resource towns to solve their problems is probably just to wait and maintain this sort of openness to all opportunities to come and grasp them with all their hearts when they finally come.
Very good.